Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. Viewers, as you know, a lot of turmoil is going on in our neighborhood, particularly with our eastern neighbor, Bangladesh, which seems to have forgotten that it was because of India that they exist now and not as a vassal state, as some kind of a mutilated, terrible, oppressed arm of Pakistan. But they have forgotten all that with the removal of Hasina and with the coming of the Jamaat and all those people who are surrounding the current caretaker, supposed caretaker. It's a mess. And the kind of rhetoric that we see coming from that place every day, the anti-India rhetoric. Apart from that, they're talking about things like, forming greater Bangladesh. Just imagine. And they want to take away everything from Orissa, Bengal, Assam, the whole of Northeast, apparently even Bihar. Everything they want, and they want to make it into a greater Bangladesh. And now the ISI chief is visiting. What is going on? What is going on in our neighborhood? Frankly, we thought that Bangladesh was, the epitome of culture. And there's something very Bengali. I mean, me being a Bengali, I thought there's something very Bengali about Bangladesh. But no, they're turning out to be worse than Pakistan. Now, to discuss all this and much more, I have a very special guest with me, Ambassador Veena Sikri. Now, among her many postings worldwide, she was High Commissioner to Bangladesh from 2003 to 2006 and has been tracking that country for over 20 years now. So as you can imagine, she is perhaps the best she's perhaps the best to speak on this. Thank you, Ambassador Sikri, for coming on this show.
Thank you. Welcome.
The thing is, obviously, the first question, what is going on in Bangladesh right now?
Well, I think let's take our minds back first to the date of 5th August 2024, which is the date when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave Dhaka, and she's been in India since then. So there were a series of events, a very sharp series of events, which led to her ouster on the 5th of August. I can go over that briefly if you like. And then I want to take you...
Sure, please go ahead.
So... it was a very created situation. It is being spoken the world over as a spontaneous students' uprising. That is the nomenclature that Professor Muhammad Yunus is trying to give to it, and he goes on talking about it again and again. But I can tell you, it was neither spontaneous, nor was it a students' uprising. When I say, why was it not spontaneous? Because it is Professor Muhammad Yunus himself who declared, perhaps in a moment of absent-mindedness, he was in New York speaking at the Clinton Global Initiative, and he invited his own special assistant, who is now also an advisor in the interim regime. He invited him on stage and introduced him to the audience as the brains behind the events of August. Exactly. And he said, don't think that happened just like that. It was not spontaneous, it was meticulously designed. And he pointed to Mahfouz Alam as the person who meticulously designed. So we know it was not spontaneous. It was planned down to the last T. Now, students' uprising. Was it a students' uprising? We know that earlier in 2013 and again in 2018, when Prime Minister was still Sheikh Hasina both times, there was a group of students. They had a quota reform movement, and their demand was that please abolish this quota, which was more than 50% by that time, which was kept for freedom fighters and their children and then their grandchildren also. So in 2018, actually, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina accepted their demand. And in 2018, quotas were abolished. They didn't exist. So the quota reform movement went to sleep. In 2024, in the month of June, very mysteriously, somebody made an appeal in the High Court of Bangladesh saying that the quota should be restored. And the judge restored the quota. And once that happened, the quota reform movement students, they were a loose group of students with coordinators from each university and so on. They came on the streets again, but their movement was very peaceful, completely non-violent and peaceful. And in fact, during the time that they were demonstrating, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited India twice. She was here in June for the swearing in of Prime Minister Modi for the third term. She was here at the end of June for a bilateral visit. She went to China in early July. So obviously the situation in Bangladesh was calm. But around 15th of of July, violence started. On return from China, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was giving a press conference, and she used the term, when people asked her about the quota, she said, yes, of course, we have abolished it, and there's been a restoration. I am going to the Supreme Court. But of course, the quota was given for the freedom fighters' children and not for Razakars' children. Now, that use of the term Razakars became the kind of a springboard, a pointer for violence. And from that night onwards in Dhaka University, violence entered the scene. The students' uprising, the quota reform movement actually faded into the background. It was completely taken over by the Jamaat-e-Islami's student wing, the Islami Chhatra Shibir, and other, radical movements which had already been planning for this moment. And even after, when the violence started, Sheikh Hasina came on television, said the Supreme Court is going to give its verdict. Please wait, end the violence. Some students had died. She regretted that. She said there'll be an inquiry. But the violence continued. The original quota reform movement has stepped away. They said, we are withdrawing from the movement. We just want to talk to the government. We have a 9-point demand. We will talk about it. So they stepped away. And only the Islamists were left. And in 15 days, so much violence was unleashed that eventually the army also said that they could not stop it, and the army chief asked Sheikh Hasina to leave. So it was neither students uprising in the term that of the quota reform movement, nor was it spontaneous. And we've seen that afterwards, when they asked Professor Mohammed Yunus to become the chief advisor of the interim government, it's amazing because he and his advisors took oath on the Constitution of Bangladesh, owing allegiance to the Constitution of Bangladesh. But the Constitution of Bangladesh has no provision for an interim government. So nobody even knows how this interim government has come into being. Somebody was saying earlier that, perhaps there was a recommendation or an agreement from the Supreme Court to say, okay, there is a vacuum to have an interim government. But there is no indication of that order. Where is that order? Where is it registered? Is it there on paper? It's not there. So this, government seems to have come into being out of the blue. There is no legality to it. There is no constitutionality under which they have come into being. And they are taking decisions which are not within the purview of any interim regime or caretaker government. They are actually trying to do things which only an elected government can do. For example, they are saying, we'll reform the constitution. They've got a constitution reform commission. We'll reform the police reform commission.
If I can interrupt for 2 seconds. Apparently, their constitution says that election after the removal or the stepping down of a head of government, election has to be held inside 3 months. 3 months are long gone.
Yes, exactly. So actually, first of all, the constitution, didn't allow for any interim government. Then they also changed the entire decision-making structure of the courts. What they did was that the students, again, these are these Islamic Chhatra Shibir students, not any kind of, regular university-going students, all members of a political movement. They surrounded the existing Supreme Court judges and High Court judges and forced them to resign. So, is this the job of students? Is this the job that any government, any regime can accept? It should not be, but it has been done. And then when new judges were appointed, all done by the, by the regime, and these new judges said, okay, we will restore the caretaker government. But you're right, even the original caretaker government had a time only of 90 days. And their only task is to maintain law and order and to have elections within 90 days, to assist the election commission in organizing. It's amazing that many, many months have passed, much more, double, treble of 90 days, and nothing is happening. Rather, they are insisting that we want to have reforms before election. Now, again, reforms is not their purview. Reforms is not the job of any interim or caretaker government. Reforms is only the responsibility of an elected government. So it is quite clear that in this situation, I don't think Professor Mohammed Yunus is in control. I think he's just doing what he's been told to do. The Jamaat-e-Islami seems to be completely calling the shots. And because this series of events, which was organized, very well organized, as Mohammed Yunus said, Pakistan was the conduit for it. It had the backing at that time of the Biden administration, but Pakistan was the conduit. And Pakistan is now trying to recreate what they lost in 1971. You spoke about the 1971 war. The same alignment of forces that was there on the losing side in 1971. The Pakistan army, the Jamaat-e-Islami, and the Razakars, who are the people, the Razakars are the people who opposed the liberation of Bangladesh. They did not want it to happen. They fought the Mukti Jodhas. They are the ones who killed the Hindus and minorities in 1971. They killed the intellectuals. Mayhem, complete mayhem. The millions of people who died at that time, and the women who were raped, and they were absolutely treated brutally, a genocide, a virtual genocide. Now, in 2024, this alignment of power has come back again, and they're trying to recreate what they wanted in 1971. For me, it's a lot of deja vu, because when I was High Commissioner to Bangladesh between 2003 and 2006, it was the same situation. Begum Khaleda Zia was in power, and Jamaat-e-Islami was an alliance partner, also in power in Bangladesh, in the government. And the Pakistan High Commission, the ISI, they had a free run in Bangladesh. And in fact, in those days, there was such a free run for Pakistan that every terrorist attack in India had a Bangladeshi footprint, because they would bring the people from Pakistan into Bangladesh, and a very porous border between India and Bangladesh. They would walk over into India and conduct terrorist acts. So it's a very dangerous situation now. We also know that one of the first things that happened in Bangladesh after 5th of August was two things happened, I would say. One was the absolutely cruel and unacceptable attack on the minorities from the 5th of August afternoon. They didn't even wait an hour after Sheikh Hasina left, but there were lootings, killings, rapes, burnings. The properties were destroyed, properties were grabbed, business establishments were destroyed, and ever since then this has continued. And that is the first thing that happened. And then the second thing that happened, they let a lot of people out of jail. A lot of terrorists who were in jail, imprisoned under Sheikh Hasina's time as Prime Minister, because of various terrorist acts. The Holy Artisan Bakery, those people were imprisoned. Many others who from the Ansarullah Bangla team, ABT, and others, they were in jail. They were just released from jail. Jail doors were broken down, and these people walked out. And you're seeing in Bangladesh today a complete lack of law and order, a complete deterioration. Extortion is the run of the day. In fact, the people are complaining, the companies are complaining that we can't do our business, we can't exist. They're complete extortion. And in addition to that, I think in Bangladesh, because so many policemen were killed, it is an amazing situation and quite unheard of.
When was this?
In the run up to the 5th of August.
Okay.
They say, and run up to the 5th of August.
Because Hasina was accused of killing a lot of these students.
Yes. Now, let me tell you that 2 or 3 things have happened. Now, that one is that when the thanas were attacked, about 400 thanas were attacked. They were completely looted. They were burnt. And I remember even a responsible newspaper like the Daily Star reported that in one thana in Sirajpur, 13 policemen, including the officer in charge, were killed. Now, can you imagine in one thana, if there's 13 people and there at least 400 thanas have been attacked. Not only attacked, they were looted. All the weapons were taken away. There were 12,000 odd weapons in these thanas. The weapons which are issued to them.
And these were all done by so-called Jamaati, so-called students.
So-called students, and the Jamaat, they were really Jamaat-e-Islami and Shibir. And when they, in a show of afterwards, they said, oh no, we are returning the weapons, and about 2,000 have come back. But there's still 10,000 of these weapons in the hands of unauthorized people. And one of the advisors in the interim regime, Shakawat Hussain, the former army officer, Brigadier Shakawat Hussain, he actually made a statement. He was giving a press conference, and he said one thing about Awami League, political activity. And then he said another thing. He said, that some of the civilians were seen carrying these 7.62 millimeter weapons, rifles, which actually are not authorized. Where did they get them from? And they were probably the looted weapons. So they were in the hands of civilians, and the killings were being conducted by those weapons. So to say that it's the policeman who did the killing or Sheikh Hasina who did the killing, this is a completely, I would say, unfinished story. And when the interim regime, wanted to invite the Office of the High Commissioner, the Human Rights Commissioner's Office, UN Human Rights Commissioner Office, invited them to come and do an investigation and see how many people have died and what happened and so on. This team from the Human Rights Office, they have been in Dhaka twice, but they have gone back saying we have been given no evidence. We don't know as yet. We
This is
cannot give a report.
very interesting because you see, we do not hear about this. We keep hearing that Hasina was conducting a massacre and she was going around killing. I think hundreds of students have been killed, but as you are saying, there is no evidence as such of it.
Yes, and when the UN Human Rights Office came to do an investigation, they said we are going back because you don't have enough evidence. So there's no report really on this, what has happened. And there's no record. Even the government of the day, the interim regime being led by Professor Muhammad Yunus, keeps saying nothing has happened to the minorities. And if at all, oh, it's not communal, it's political. Is it all right to kill people because of politics? I mean, it is ridiculous to take, in this day and age, to use as an excuse that the attacks, the lynchings, the killings, the rapings were because of political affiliations, and this is all right. I mean, unbelievable. And they kept maintaining, and then they started blaming the Indian media. Even the Daily Star editor wrote one long article saying, I am telling you, I'm pleading with my friends in the Indian media that why they're writing all this is not true. And then, after denying it completely, when our foreign secretary went there on 9th of December, and he was there for one day, and he, must have been very frank, as he said. His talks were frank, candid, and constructive. In diplomatic language, means they're very, very tough indeed. And he would have told them that, we know that these killings have happened. There's evidence, and the families are there to say what has happened to them. And the very next day, the interim regime announced, there were 88 incidents and 70 people had been arrested. Of course, before that, the Pratham Alo, another very respected newspaper, before the media was completely gagged in Bangladesh, the Pratham Alo had announced a study they did between 5th August and 20th August. 1,608 incidents took place. And they said we have done it after checking with each family. So they have recorded and reported 1,608 incidents. The Bangladesh Hindu, Buddhist, Christian Oikyu Jot, the Unitary Council, they have recorded some 2,000 incidents. But even the Pratham Alo has described at least 1,608 incidents. So these incidents have taken place. The ethnic cleansing, the genocidal attack on the minorities is taking place. It is continuing. And just to announce for one day that, 88 took place, and that was, it exposed how much a complete lie is being lived before that.
So Yunus is a Nobel laureate, Nobel laureate. He has apparently, at least until recently, he had the Biden administration's backing. How did he get away by doing something like this? And as you were saying that he is not in control. So is it Pakistan completely in control? Because these Chhatra Shibir guys, the Jamaati young boys, I don't know about whether they're young or not. The thing is that if they are in control and they are actually the front people of Pakistan, so it's basically Pakistan's writ that is running. Did not America, did not the US, did not the Biden administration realize that this might happen?
Well, it's very surprising if they didn't, because, as I said, Pakistan is absolutely trying to recreate their earlier bonhomie with certain groups in Bangladesh, but it's not all of Bangladesh. Two things. First of all, with Pakistan, you're right. They're completely unwrapping all the earlier restrictions that were there, which were imposed for all the decades. For example, there was no trade. Virtually no trade between Bangladesh and Pakistan. Ships were not coming from Bangladesh, from Pakistan to Bangladesh. Now they're coming. Ships have docked. In fact, there have been reports even in the media that some customs officers found banned goods like explosives in that cargo. And when they were not allowing that explosive to come into Bangladesh, they were stopped and said the person was transferred and then the explosives were allowed in. There's a report even that Jaish-e-Mohammed Qaeda may have come on those ships and melted away. Where they have gone, whether other parts of Bangladesh, whether Northeast India, we don't know. Visas were not given to Pakistan citizens except after clearance of the Ministry of Home Affairs. That rule has been changed. There was always a physical checking of any goods coming from Pakistan. That rule has been changed. and there were there were complete restrictions on Pakistani students studying in Bangladesh universities. That has been changed, and now not only that, Mohammad Yunus and the Prime Minister of Pakistan have met twice. The last time, I think, at the D8 summit in Cairo, and they are talking of restoring defense cooperation. Senior generals of Bangladesh have visited Pakistan and asked for those aircraft, Chinese-built aircraft from there. Now we heard that one of the DGs, that ISI has, there's one, the main DG, and then there are DG strategic analysis and so on. One of the DGs is there, or was there till a few days ago in Bangladesh, and they're talking of training in defense. In defense equipment and of training in defense. 4 major generals from Pakistan will be in Bangladesh, posted in various headquarters, and taking part in the training. I mean, this is absolutely unbelievable. It never happened before. It never, I mean, no Indian major general has ever gone there for training or anything like that.
So, who exactly are they fighting? Are they going to fight? Who exactly are they going to declare a war on?
Well, I think Pakistan's target is very clear. And I'm surprised that, after the tremendous relationship that India and Bangladesh have built up over the years, and I think that one has to also be very careful, because I know that during the time I was there, when Pakistan was very active in Bangladesh, they were giving support to all the Northeast insurgent groups. And India's security red lines were just not being observed at all. And now, if we have a revival of that situation, but we know that Sheikh Hasina respected India's security red lines, and she, did not want to give shelter to any of the Northeast insurgent groups. Anup Chetia was handed back to India. Paresh Barua, who had a thriving business in Bangladesh earlier, was sent out, and he's now in China or Myanmar or something like that. And all that is now, if it's going to be revived, it's going to be very difficult and very dangerous and worrisome for India. So India has to be very concerned about the situation that Pakistan is trying to create or recreate in Bangladesh. And also, one is worried about one hears about the Bangladesh army, because Pakistan is trying to influence, Islamize, radicalize sections of the Bangladesh army. And that would be a very unfortunate situation, because it is because of the radicalization of certain elements in the Bangladesh army that this whole situation was allowed to take place in the first place. And if that's going to continue, it's going to be extremely worrisome.
No, but isn't it? I mean, what does Bangladesh think of itself, or even what does Pakistan think of Bangladesh, that they actually believe that Bangladesh army, with whatever outdated equipment or whatever it has, it can actually take on the Indian security forces? I mean, it is next to impossible to have a conventional kinetic conflict with India for them. But yes, do you think instead of that, all this is a lot of posturing, but actual target is basically to ensure that terrorism that they can use to needle India?
Well, terrorism is certainly a big weapon. They have used it before, and I'm sure absolutely that they will use it again. And you're right about needling India, because the anti-Indianism that they have tried to fan over these last few years, I would say, not even now, this is a very well-planned event that they would have tried before. Now they have been able to do that. Huge amount of anti-Indianism. In fact, they're associating India's name with everything that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina did or did not do. And if she did something, it's because India told her to do it. If she did not do something, it was because India told her not to do it. It's amazing, because they're trying to completely ignore the mutually beneficial cooperation, economic cooperation, and simultaneous growth that existed between India and Bangladesh through through the work they did together. And in the last 15 years, Bangladesh has grown at 6 to 8%, which has taken them out of the LDC category and made them into a much more advanced economy, and has greatly benefited the people of Bangladesh through their availability of goods, availability of jobs, growth of different sectors, foreign investment coming in, and now it's all stopped. And all you have is that Pakistan and China too is fully supporting this situation, because the foreign affairs advisor of Bangladesh, Saeed Hussain, he was in China just a few days ago. And the readout of their meetings and their conversations, he met Wang Yi, was, very strong, that they're going to have full cooperation and all kinds of effort to work together, cooperation in all fields, water resources, the old Tista project they will try and get, and the defense cooperation, which is already very strong between China and Bangladesh. So all these issues are there. So China is wasting no time to assure Bangladesh, the present regime in Bangladesh, of their support.
So when you were there, BNP was in power. Now the thing is that there's no BNP right now. We have these Jamaat people, Yunus and all. Uh, so do you think BNP will be as anti-India as it was? Because I've also been hearing rumors about, some talk has been going on about there is some talk India may be willing to talk to BNP because do you think Yunus and company or rather these Jamaatis will allow BNP to come back to power, or will they actually want some sort of a government where it's basically again dominated by the Jamaatis?
Well, you're right that in 2003, 2006, there was a 5-year, 2001, 2006 government by Begum Khalida Zia with Jamaat-e-Islami as a partner. So they have been thick partners since then, and they've been working together. And I think that in August 2024, when Jamaat-e-Islami worked with Pakistan to, get the chief advisor as Mohammed Yunus, BNP assumed that they were again going to be with Jamaat-e-Islami and they would be doing everything together. But gradually, it's not worked out like that at all. And Jamaat-e-Islami has shown very little interest in continuing their coordination with BNP. Rather, they have shown a great interest in bringing the Islamic forces together. And the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami has had many meetings in Bangladesh, bringing there are many smaller Islamic parties. There have been big photographs of the Amir going and meeting each and every of these smaller party leaders and telling that we're going to work together, we're going to form a joint organization, and we are going to, lead the government, and completely leaving BNP out in the cold. And the second political organization that is trying to come up is a students' organization. Now, you can't really call them students, because if they're students, they should be in university and studying. So they're trying to make an organization called Students' Anti-Discrimination Movement, or Discrimination Against something. They're creating a political organization. They're bringing others together to create this political organization. And it is to give these kind of organizations a running time to develop their political identity that all this drama about delay in the elections is coming up. And they're announcing elections end of this year or early next year or middle of next year. And the BNP is now got quite fed up of this, and they've said they want elections
They've started realizing something is wrong.
Yes, and they're now wanting elections by August of this year. And India, I must tell you, we've always been in touch with all political groups in Bangladesh. When I was there, of course, BNP was in power. I was in touch with all their ministers and all their leaders, and we had a great, interaction, meetings, discussions of issues. If we didn't agree, even then we met and discussed issues. We had social gatherings together. So we had always had a good interaction, but I always kept contacts with all political organizations, including the Awami League. Sheikh Hasina was in the opposition at that time, but I had absolutely no hesitation in meeting her from time to time or talking to her about what is going on, what are their plans, and so, etc. And similarly with the other political parties like the Jatiyo Party, led by former President Ershad, and so many other small and big formations. So I think the BNP is fine when the election and the BNP gets elected. That's fine. There should be free and fair elections.
So are we talking to BNP?
Of course, by all means, I think we should. I don't see.
We should, or are we already?
I think so. I'm sure we are. I've always been in favor of talking to all the political organizations. In fact, I can tell you that even this a year ago, when the elections were held in Bangladesh in January 2024. And I think BNP made a lot of effort to come and talk to our government people and so on. And I think everybody told them, please take part in the elections. They should have. If they had taken part in those elections a year ago, they may well have won, because there was strong anti-incumbency. There always is. After 3 terms, you can expect a strong anti-incumbency. And of course, a strong anti-India tirade going on, behind the scenes, underground, telling people. So if BNP had taken part, you never know, they could have, but they chose not to take part. And I think now they're very, very keen, and certainly the elections should be held. I think that should be held very quickly.
So is the BNP, because you see, I was just reading this Mahfouz Alam guy who wants to create a greater Bangladesh by, basically eating up half of India. He is saying that they're not going to allow Awami League to take part in it. So what is this latest ploy now, and what exactly is BNP going to do about it?
Well, I think I must tell you that BNP themselves have made many statements supporting Awami League's participation in the elections. They have said, no, we don't believe that any
Is it
institution.
because they want the Jamaat out?
They want free and fair elections. And just as when BNP did not take part in the elections, so the elections are described as not being free and fair because of that, because the major political party did not take part. And now they know that if they have an election and they will win, but Awami League has not taken part, then that will also be called not free and fair. Then Awami League will be campaigning that look, these elections were not free and fair because we were not allowed to take part. So BNP is being very sensible about it. BNP is being very, I think, democratic about it, and they see and want to see the restoration of democratic forces in Bangladesh. Awami League and BNP are the two homegrown parties. They are parties which are born and brought up in Bangladesh. Jamaat-e-Islami is not a party, the Muslim League was created in Dhaka, but Jamaat-e-Islami was formed by Maududi in the undivided India, which has its biggest branch in Pakistan, and then, of course, in Bangladesh, this branch in Pakistan always has kept in touch with the Bangladesh branch of the Jamaat-e-Islami, So, in that sense, certainly BNP has been supporting the participation of Awami League. So, I don't think that Mahfouz Alam can say what he likes. I think this one illegitimate regime, a special advisor in that regime, advisor without portfolio in that regime, I don't know how he can decide that a particular political party will not take part. I think that the people of Bangladesh themselves would want genuinely free and fair elections where all political parties take part.
So here a question, obvious question: why are we talking? Why have we talked to basically an illegitimate regime? Why are we talking to them at all? Why aren't we? I mean, as general Indians, the question obviously will be, instead of that, I mean, why haven't we put pressure on Bangladesh, ensured some kind of sanctions, ensured stopping of goods and all? Let the people decide, what exactly this Yunus and company, or rather, if you say primarily these Jamaatis are doing. They're leading the country up whatever path, it will just end up in somewhere in the abyss.
Absolutely.
Why are we kind of allowing that to happen?
See, first and foremost, when the party was sworn in, when the Mohammed Yunus as chief advisor, he was sworn in on the 8th of August, our prime minister sent a message saying, yes, we felicitating him on his assumption of post of chief advisor. But he also mentioned immediately that please take care of the Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. And we have always had a system of talking to the government of the day, because there are many issues on which you need to tackle with a government, whether it is a border issue, whether it is a trade issue, or any issue. Even you have your the Indian High Commission is there. There's so many issues which come up on a day-to-day basis. You need to talk to a local administration to solve those issues. So in keeping with that, always we tell the government of the day that yes, we are talking to you. But it is quite clear that India has said, and when Foreign Secretary Vikram Mishri went there on the 9th of December, after that the media has carried that we told them that our substantive dealing will resume only after the elected government. And in the meanwhile, all day-to-day discussions and movements will be held. For example, we received a request for 50,000 tons of rice because they were running short of food.
Why
grain.
did we?
Well, it was sent, but
Because that was the general public opinion in India. Why are we doing it?
Yeah,
I mean, they are basically insulting us. They're saying they're working against us completely. Why are we helping them?
actually Pakistan is really worsening the situation, and bringing out as though this is the enemy number one, and this is absolutely unbelievable, because I do know that during the last 15 years there was a great deal of positive interaction and positive feeling among the people of India and Bangladesh. Thousands of students came every year to study here. Millions, can you imagine 1.5 million people given visas every year? And they come for pilgrimage, they come for study, they come for trade, they come for shopping, and big medical, come for medical. And in fact, to say that we don't no longer need Indian medical, it was interesting to see that when Tawhid Hussain was in China and talking to Wang Yi, one of the items in the readout was, we are designating 4 hospitals in Kunming as for receiving Bangladesh patients. So, but it's fine, you can have a designated hospital, but can you speak the same language? Can you go and get the same kind of treatment, on a day-to-day basis? They know who you are. We know who they are. We have the same illnesses. We have the same problems. We have the same diet. We know what happens when you have a certain kind of diet. The same high incidence of diabetes. Same problems, exactly. Our civilization heritage is shared. You can't take that away. So I think that the effort is very much there to show that India is no longer necessary. In fact, when the Turkey delegation came, I think a commerce minister led delegation from Turkey came to Bangladesh and met the chief advisor. One of the sentences in the readout which came in the media was, yes, we are going to do everything to replace what you are getting from India. So, this kind of feeling is being generated by Bangladesh when talking to all their new or old and now new interlocutors, telling them that no, we don't want to take anything from India. But I don't think this is going well with the people of Bangladesh.
I mean, do they even understand the cost involved?
Exactly.
The logistics involved?
Exactly. The people don't like it at all because there's rampant inflation.
Absolutely.
There's rampant inflation. There are no jobs because the factories are not functioning at all. There's no law and order, so the factories cannot function. Many of the workers are asking for earlier wages. Some of the biggest factories have been shut down. So there are no jobs. And because there are no jobs and because factories are shut down, so foreign direct investment is not coming in. Rate of growth has fallen enormously. Foreign exchange reserves are falling. And so there is a great worry among the people of Bangladesh. And many people are saying, Agi bhalo chilo, it was better earlier, So I think that the situation in Bangladesh is very, very fluid, very volatile.
Okay, now here comes the role of the US. Now, when we are talking about the US, I have heard by certain people who know maybe this in Washington and all, that the problem with the Biden administration in particular was that there was too much Islamist influence on that government in terms of too many front organizations of the Muslim Brotherhood and all. They were lobbying, there was so much lobbying, and that there was influence, and it seemed to them that Hasina was anti-US and these Islamists will help their cause, but they forgot at the same time that these Islamists were actually Pakistani collaborators. Now, how does this situation change with the coming of Donald Trump?
I think you're right, what you're saying about many successive administrations, State Department particularly. They always considered the Jamaat-e-Islami as a moderate, democratic Islamic party.
How?
I mean, it is amazing. But I remember even when I was there, I was talking to many, American diplomats about it, and I never understood this. And especially because even today in Bangladesh, the Jamaat-e-Islami does not recognize the constitution of Bangladesh. They say that their constitution of their political party is superior to the constitution of Bangladesh because constitution of Bangladesh is a man-made constitution and they will recognize only allegiance to the Quran. So, when a party does not recognize a secular document, a constitution of a country, be it even if they were in America, they would say the same thing to the American constitution. And they're saying it to their own constitution, their Bangladeshi national. And because of that, Jamaat-e-Islami, according to the decision of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, was not allowed to participate in elections because they never recognized the constitution of Bangladesh. So I think it's amazing with this background and this knowledge of what is happening inside Bangladesh, for the Americans to think that Jamaat-e-Islami can be a moderate, democratic Islamic party. And whatever they may have thought, they have now shown their true colors. The Jamaat-e-Islami has shown their true colors. They have shown what they want, and they've shown they want an Islamic regime. Because the Mahfouz Alam that you mentioned, he's tweeting about having a caliphate, having a khilafat, movement, and they don't recognize, they don't want the minorities to stay. They're pushing them out. In fact, many people are saying that those whose properties were grabbed, they're now getting telephone calls saying, take the money and go. They want them to leave. They don't want to have a minority population of 1.5 million people. And I think that when you come to the present administration, President Donald Trump's administration, he has always shown himself very strongly against Islamic radicals. And he's completely against their activities, completely against, in fact, in his first term, he'd even banned visas for some people from some groups and so on. So I'm sure that now, he's just been only a week or so in office, I'm sure he will be looking at this issue very carefully and very seriously.
I hope so. And before I ask the last question about which way Bangladesh is headed, I have one quick question. In terms of, you see, I was in Bangladesh sometime, I think I had gone there for a visit, I think 2013 or something during the height of the Shabag movement. At that time, I saw how students over there, the Dhaka University students, how they were up against the radicals over there. You know, the radicals, these Jamaati people and all, they were going around cutting off bloggers' hands. And there was this whole Shahbag movement was there. What happened in Bangladesh that in these 10 years, that it seems now Dhaka University and all these places, they are now full of these Jamaati type people. You were talking about so many people coming, so many students and all coming to India. Where have all these people vanished?
Well, this is what Jamaat-e-Islami has tried to do in the last 5 months. I told you about how they removed the judges by absolute mobocracy, by mob justice, They did the same thing with the vice chancellors. They went to every university, surrounded the vice chancellors, and did not go till they actually forced them to resign. And now new vice chancellors have been appointed. I told you about the quota reform movement when those people were genuine students, and they have melted away. They are students still, but they're not being allowed any say. And they are, that quota reform movement is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And so the genuine students are being completely isolated, and Islamist students are joining universities and taking over control. And even professors, the moderate professors, the secular minded professors, they were also surrounded. Many Hindu professors also were surrounded and asked to leave. But even Muslims, even I can say activities, strong action, the same action that they were taking against Hindus, Buddhists, and Christians are being taken against the Sufis, against the bazaars, against the Ahmadiyyas. So all this action is being taken, and they are equally being hounded as the minorities, and they're being treated as the other. And only the Islamic radical groups are being allowed to have their normal functioning, and this is very worrisome. That's why I said many people in Bangladesh are worried, not only from the economic point of view, not only from the point of view of the economy having gone down the tube and jobs having disappeared and inflation being rampant, but they're also worried from the point of view of the nature of Bangladesh. The constitution of Bangladesh, which has secularism and democracy and nationalism and socialism as its 4 pillars, they want to change that constitution. So there's a lot of concern in Bangladesh, but the voice of the people is not being heard. The media is completely gagged. 200 journalists are supposed to be in jail, charged with murder. I mean, how is that possible? And so the press accreditation has been removed from many journalists. They have lost their jobs. Boardrooms have been taken over of the media community, and it's a very difficult situation.
So, what is there in future, not only for India, Bangladesh, but for Bangladesh itself? Because you see, from whatever you said, it seems like Jamaat-e-Islami, Yunus, of course, is a figurehead actually, a mask kind of, if I can use that word. So, they will ensure a Jamaat-backed party, and that need not be BNP, comes to power. So, that it will be a sham election. It will be a mockery of an election, but they will say democracy has been restored fully. What is the future? Where are we headed? Where is the subcontinent headed?
Well, I think that, quite frankly, I don't think this government, the interim regime, they're illegal. They have no constitutional position. So I don't know how they are existing. From every point of view, I think this regime cannot last.
So the BNP will have to step up now.
There's so
Because
many
Awami League
those
is
people
not.
there must be working on. I believe even the Awami League activities have started in Bangladesh, even though all these months, because so many of them were killed, so many of them were brutally massacred and thrown into jail, and cases launched against them. But the papers are saying that now again Awami League is trying to get back into action. So as I said again, it depends on the support of the people. I don't think the people, the Awam, will support radical parties. They just don't want radicalism. They may be, all the people are deeply religious. Everybody, whatever your religion may be, you're deeply religious, you have faith, that is absolutely fine. But from there to say you want an Islamist government, that's a different matter altogether. So you want a regime which is democratic. I think the Bangladeshis are very democratic by nature. And that is why this question of anti-incumbency, and wanting a free and fair election, so that they have the option of participating and voting for somebody else. That is something that they've always looked forward to. So I think that will have to happen. There will have to be free and fair elections.
Do you wish we were a little more vocal?
I'm sure our government has been very carefully watching the situation and very carefully noting what is happening. I'm quite sure. And when the time is right, you will see.
Okay. That Arakan army and all on that side, is Bangladesh in trouble from that side as well, meaning Arakan and all?
I do think that the situation in Myanmar is very serious. And what you said about the successes of the Arakan army against the Myanmar army, against the junta, that has been quite remarkable because now, at the present moment, the entire border between Bangladesh and Myanmar is controlled by the Arakan army. The Myanmar army is nowhere there. So the Arakan army has an even stronger position against the Rohingyas. So they are not allowing the Rohingyas from who are now in Bangladesh, they're not allowing to go back. In fact, the Rohingyas at one time were even starting to go back and fight side by side with the Myanmar junta against the Arakan army, but they lost. Everybody lost. So I do think that the situation in Arakan is going to complicate matters for Bangladesh greatly. And there've been all kinds of talk. There've been talk that, is it that the Arakan army has crossed the river Naf and come to this side of the river Naf? Is that happening? There is no news coming out at all. There was a very mysterious fire on St. Martin Island recently, destroying all the tourist infrastructure. There were some 3-4 hotels there, though that infrastructure had been completely burnt down. There's no authentic news coming.
Have we opened a line of communication with the Arakan army?
Well, that is for the government to say. I would not be like to
What would
comment
you
on
wish?
that. But I'm quite sure that our government is keeping a very close eye on what is happening in Myanmar because we have such a long land and maritime border with Myanmar. Myanmar is a very, very important neighbor for India. We've always, again, people have said, why are you talking to the junta? But because of the day-to-day situation on the ground, you have troops and, on our side, then you have we have ethnic family connections between the Chins and the Mizos, between the Nagas on the Myanmar side, the Nagas on the Indian side, between the tribes of Arunachal Pradesh and the tribes in the Sagaing division. So these situation has meant that we had even given a leeway that people could cross over without permits for a certain kilometer. That's all been stopped now. We do know that because the situation is so serious that these special movement has all been stopped. But certainly that shows we are keeping a very close eye on what is happening in Myanmar. And that means because, again, it is the Arakan army on the other side. Again, in Rakhine state, it is the Arakan army facing us on the Indian border. I told you about the Bangladesh border, but even along the Indian border with the Rakhine state, it is the Arakan army there. So obviously we have to be in touch with them. We have to talk to them.
Yeah. Okay. And so basically the path ahead is wait and watch, I guess, and send out a strong message and perhaps ask the US to put a lot of pressure on this Yunus guy because Mr. Trump does not like Yunus. That is for certain. Let's see what role the deep state plays in this.
Yeah, I think that one of the promises Donald Trump made that he was going to do away with the deep state. That's one thing. Secondly, I must say that of course, we will watch and see what President Trump's administration does. But even the previous administration, just before they demitted charge, I think in late December or early January, I remember that Jake Sullivan, the former NSA, telephoned Professor Mohammed Yunus and from what we can gather from the readout, expressed his concern.
Yep.
That things were not going right. And he told him that we wanted stability, prosperity, and democracy in Bangladesh. Clearly saying none of these three exist. There is no democracy, there is no stability, and no prosperity. Now, if that disappointment was already there, it had already set in, before the administration changed in the US, I can imagine that the new administration will certainly reach its own conclusions about the situation in Bangladesh.
You're absolutely right. And that is why the worry is that, a sham election will be held and will be passed off as a democratic exercise. But
I don't think that will happen. No, I don't think that a sham election can be held in Bangladesh anymore. Because as it is, this regime in Bangladesh is now being accused and saying that they are doing all the things that they were accusing Sheikh Hasina of doing earlier. Whether it is enforced disappearances, whether it is, false cases and murder charges and sham elections, they're being blamed. They're saying you're doing the same things. That's why people are saying it was better earlier. So I do not think the people of Bangladesh will in any way accept any kind of sham election. They will want full participation by all the major political parties. All the parties registered with the election commission should be allowed to participate, and there should be free and fair elections as soon as possible. Whether this regime can do it or not, I have my doubts. I don't think this regime can.
Absolutely. I hope so. I hope so. And thank you, Ambassador Sikri,
Thank you.
for coming on this show. It was absolutely an enlightening discussion. So many things I'm certain viewers will have learned. I myself also learned. Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.